Freedom Truth Radio Show is the one show where the truth will make you mad first and then make you free. Thank you all for tuning in. We have a very special guest I'm going to bring on the line in about 2 seconds. I want to just give him a brief introduction. One thing I want to say is we did have some technical difficulties last week, and even today the computer was trying to give us a few problems. But, you know, that's what happens when you have a broadcast that is reporting truth and trying to get good information out to people to get them aware of what's going on. There's all kinds of things in the air, all kinds of things in the ethers that just seem to fight the system and fight against you when you're trying to put out good truth and good information. So, bring me down. Thanks. No problem. All right. So, tonight I have a very special guest on the air that I'm very pleased to be a part of the Freedom Truth Radio Show broadcast. And his name is Mr. Kelby Smith. He is the owner and CEO of a website called hisadvocates.org. Check that out. He helps people in foreclosure situations. He helps people and teaches them how to live in the private and helps them understand the whole notion of U.S. citizenship versus private citizenship. And he is a bowl of education. He has a lot that he can teach. He has a lot to share. And I'm very happy to have him on the broadcast tonight. And Kelby, are you there? Can you hear me?
I am, buddy. Can you hear me? You're cutting in and out just a bit, but you're sounding pretty good in the last 30 seconds.
Okay, good. You're very clear. I can hear you as well.
Good.
Welcome to Freedom Truth Radio
thank
Show.
you for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Go ahead. It's good to have you.
You there?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Where do you want to start? What do you want to talk about?
Well, let's preface the show a little bit to get people aware of what living in the private is. Maybe we can give them a brief educational background as to how you came to this point of your teaching this type of education to people, and tell them exactly what living in the private is. I've talked about it a little bit on this show. We've coined it as sovereign living, which I don't really like that term, but that's the term that some people are familiar with, just because it's become an anomaly because it's been termed wrong, and people get a really bad notion about that word and about that phrase, and they really don't understand what living in the private is. It can be very advantageous to them if they know how to understand laws and understand history. And that's where I think you come in, and you can help educate the Freedom Truth Radio listeners to what that is.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. First off, I've been on kind of this journey for 10 years. I hold a broker's license in California, a real estate broker's license. I've done thousands of loans. Been trained by the banks, been trained by the auditors, controllers, comp controllers on understanding loan processes. And in 2008, 6, 7, and 8, I really had a huge wake-up call.
Wow.
And for me, it was I discovered that every loan was prepaid, and because the United States Corporation was in bankruptcy. So when I say things to your listeners, I'm going to speak from a standpoint of whatever I'm saying right now, I can absolutely prove in the law. And I've never been questioned by anybody on the stuff I state, because it is found in the law and most people will find it. So when you're talking about sovereignty, number one, I come from a Christian background, so I have to look, is that biblical? And Genesis 1:26 says you're supposed to have dominion. Dominion means sovereign authority. Now, I personally believe there's only one sovereign, that is God.
Right.
So But if man wants to give me the right of a king in law, I have no problem in accepting that right. And as we know, the sovereignty of the king was passed to the state. And so a lot of people are like, well, I'm not the state. Well, then you don't really understand the definition of state. When you go pull out Black's Law and you look at the word state, the lowercase state means a body politic of people, and it uses the word people. So you're talking about what comprises the word state is people. So the sovereignty of the king was passed to the people. So when you look at the all capitalized letter definition of state, which is the corporate one, it says a community of persons. And so when you start digging in through, like, and I don't know about calling it matrix or calling it whatever. It really is public versus private. It is so simple once you understand public versus private. So, you know, and let's do a history lesson for everybody just so they can kind of get their mind wrapped around it. You know, in the 1600s, the king didn't have a cell phone, and he wasn't able to call, you know, his boys at the colonies and send wires and give them money. It was very planned out, long periods of time, 100-year business move. I mean, it was a 100-year business plan or 200-year business plan or whatever it was. And so King John at that time is funding, King George, he's funding a lot of money to political private societies to get his way into certain functions and things. Now, here's the problem. The people were so awake. Now, I've heard that the founding fathers were all a bunch of private society members that created the documents just for them. And I'm going to beg to differ. I'm going to think that a lot of the members, yes, were Masons, but the reality is even a 32nd degree Mason doesn't really understand what the Masons are all about. It's only until you get to the highest degree, which is the only unearned degree of a Freemason, the 33rd degree, where A, you find out that they actually worship Lucifer, and B, the power structure really is wrapped around that degree.
Wow. And
so the large portion of Freemasons don't really understand the conspiracy behind the Mason movement, and they don't understand, you know, the programming that happens. You know, it's like when you get into the Shriners, and I mean this literally. I got videos of guys that are Shriners and Masons that talk about Lucifer, that he's God. And so there's that programming that happens in these political private societies that we have to take into consideration. So King George really wasn't on a cell phone working it, and he was just transferring large amounts of gold and sending it over with a few guys to politically influence the East Coast. But it was on such a rampage towards freedom that these founding fathers had to give the people something, and they literally made a declaration of war, and they literally separated themselves from the king, and they came under God. And so in law, if you read the Declaration of Independence, you can't deny that you are saying God is sovereign and that he is the sovereign. And you cannot deny that you're self-governed. So there's a lot of Christians out there that say, oh, you have to be obedient to the United States corporation because that's who's in power over you. And I'm going to say to you, that's correct if you're a United States citizen, but it's incorrect if you're an American.
That's right.
So let me dispel what a United States citizen is, what a national is, what a national of the United States is, what a non-resident alien is, and what an American national isn't. There's no such words as American national in sequence describing anything in law. It's American dash lowercase national. And what you're saying is you're a state citizen, as when you're saying you're the American, and then you're saying after that hyphen you'd be saying you're a national under 8 U.S.C. 1101 A21. A person that owes allegiance to a state. So you're giving them who you are in your declaration and who you are in the United States corporate law. So who in the heck is going to care about you describing yourself as an American dash lowercase national? Just call yourself an American. And let me say it this way. If you look at the Declaration of Independence, pull the document out and look at it and put it in front of your kids. It says, these United States of America. The word United is lowercase. So
That's
the
right.
name of your
Yes.
country was never the United States of America. It was these United. United's lowercase. That's an adjective describing the two jurisdictions, states of America. So if you are a state citizen, you are an American, better described as your allegiance is owed to the state of which you were born on. Ben Franklin never said he was a United States citizen. He was a Virginianite. You know, and so we have to take these little tidbits of lawful information to heart, and how does it apply to us today? And so they gave us something, and Ben Franklin wrote, you know, the lady walked up to him after they signed, and she said, what kind of government have you given us? And he said, a republic, ma'am, if you can keep it. Now, that's been described to everybody, and they always take it to heart as everybody. And you have to ask yourself a question. Have you ever been trained to read the Declaration of Independence in your school?
No, of course not.
Have you ever been trained? Right. Have you ever read the Constitution or the Bill of Rights in school, in public school? And the answer is no. Did you sign the Declaration of Independence? The answer is no.
No.
How can you be a party to something that you haven't made an allegiance to? Now, you can make your allegiance to the flag and put your hand over it and all that, but what you contract with in law, according to the Constitution, what you sign your name to is the highest form of law on the land. It says in the Constitution, contract law shall not be abridged, meaning the right of a man to contract with another man, period. So when I started digging it 10 years ago, I came across a case called Rundle versus Delaware. I found that the United States was a corporation. I found that all the states were corporations, all the counties were corporations, all the municipalities were corporations. And they just did a mere shift of the names. Instead of being States of America, meaning America, they called it United States of America, incorporated it. It's incorporated in Delaware. It's been incorporated multiple times. And it actually sits on Dun & Bradstreet, and you go to delaware.gov and you can see what I'm talking about. And you can do it for all the counties, do it for all the states, and so on and so forth. And if you look at Title 28, Section 3002, the United States is a federal corporation. So it says it in law.
Yes, it is.
And then you look at UCC 307H, talking about the United States Corporation. It says its exclusive jurisdiction is in the District of Columbia. So what the corporation has done, it's contracted with a bunch of private Americans to be public surety for the registered organization known as their birth certificate. That's it. Your birth certificate is a instrument on 32-pound watermark banknote paper.
Yes.
And you were pledged by your mom as the informant on the birth certificate, where the footprint, the handprint, basically the manifest to the vessel, in its commercial vessel. And the state then published it in a newspaper. Nobody came to make a claim on the registered organization, and now the state owns and controls the registered organization.
That's right.
Your mom is listed as a mother on the application, but on the signatory area, she's listed as informant / parent. When you look at the definition of parent, you'll understand what I'm talking about. It's different than mom or dad.
That's right.
So all of these words, every word on every agreement is a flip side to the truth. Every word is a flip side to the truth. Non-resident alien. People calling themselves, I'm a non-resident alien. Are you really? I thought you were a man. See, if you're a non-resident alien, you're just giving yourself a term from the IRS code.
That's right.
If you're a national of the United States, you're saying that you're synonymous with the United States citizen.
And that holds you in contract with what they say in that code.
Right. And so you understand, Rundle versus Delaware says a corporation cannot sue a real living man.
Mm-hmm.
So how is a corporation and a corporate court bringing in a real living man where in law, go take a look at all the codes. There's no mention of a man in the code. It's all persons.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you start getting your mind wrapped around what we really are in Christ or in under God or in man's law, and what we can choose on our own, you will be absolutely amazed that you can literally come under God, which is the original form of government that God gave this whole earth. He came down and he dwelt with a people, and that was his form of government. He was king. You were self-governed. So since that time, there's always been a king ruling over the people, and sometimes good, and most of the time bad. Mm-hmm. And so we're in a position right now where we're the only nation in the world like this, where we can pledge to the state and be a State of the Union citizen, but you still have to deal with all the contracts that hold you to the corporation. So we have a program, it's called Living in the Private program, and we help people deal with getting a passport as a State of the Union citizen, mm-hmm. where they can actually get a certified copy of the passport application that has the affidavit affixed to the application. And what that means is, whenever you get any charge instrument and you go to any court, they're always going to say, such and such person I saw at such and such residence address, and this is how they get the warrant for the arrest. And they saw such and such person at such and such residence address. And then they went down to the United States Post Office, and such person receives personal mail at that address. And then they went down to DMV, such and such person has 2 motor vehicles registered to that address. 3 contract rules: zip code, zip code, zip code, zone improvement plans. When you look at the zip code is territory.
That's right.
Territory is everything above the land. God is everything about the land. So when you're saying I am a private man and you're an American on the land, you're not contracted to the United States in any fashion, or all of your contracts have been reformed to be as a state citizen. And then you have the privacy and protections of man's law in the highest degree under treaty law, which is punishable by death. Mm-hmm. And you have the security of God's law in support of it. So we show people it's an 18-step process, and it's aggravating and it's long. But I got to tell you something. The documents are 10% of what it takes to be an American. And what I mean by that is people are so dumbed down, so sheep-like, followers. Nobody, and it's crazy to me to watch people say they want to be free,
right,
but don't count the cost.
That's true.
And they don't understand what that means. And so we have a training program. It's an 18-month program, and it deals with 10 different modules, and we put the first module out there. It's for free. So if anybody wants to go look at it, they can go to youtube.com/isadvocates, and you'll see it's probably somewhere in March, beginning of March. It's 5.5 hours.
Yep.
And it's a training module on who you are. And I'm going to tell you something. People that watch that really start to get their mind opened up to really what's going on in this world and really what we need to be doing to understanding who we are, because we have to be reprogrammed to our full potential of what we should be operating as under God. And instead, we're thinking from a weak-minded negative position where we've already lost in our minds, because that's what they teach us from the very beginning of our life. Mm-hmm. The word no is always told to us. No, we can't do that. Right. And it's programmed in our mind. Or she is this. And, you know, I'm going to tell you something right now. We literally can create And I mean that. It's biblical for you Christians that don't believe me. I'll prove you wrong. That's one of the reasons why the angels are jealous. We can create. And we do it through, it starts with a thought. And it's something that comes from our heart, comes to a thought. You have to believe and you have to receive. And I'm going to tell you right now, that's not only biblical, but the people that practice this and do this change the world, change their own life, change their own surroundings, change their own circumstances, and live in a much healthier mind because you're happy and you're not thinking about all the negative stuff. So we have to get Americans that believe in pushing back any world structure that wants to limit us from our capacity as a private American under God. And we have to get these guys completely reprogrammed into understanding their power. I help people that they walk into the passport office, United States Post Office, try to apply for the passport. They get shot down, and they come out defeated. And I'm like, dude, go back in there, kick that door in nicely, and let them know you are going to accept this on demand and no other opportunity, and to stop giving you legal advice.
That's right.
And they just, they got to take it back. We got to take it back. We have a right under God to do this. We have a right under law to do this. And so this is a total paradigm shift of understanding private versus public, which is really a United States citizen versus an American. That's really what private versus public is. It's the same thing as property versus land. Property is a legal description. It's everything above the ground. Metes and bounds is a lawful description of the surveyed land. And so when you're buying property, you're not buying land. That's why it's recorded as a joint tenant.
That's right.
Or tenant in common. You're not a landowner because you're paying taxes to something or somebody.
You never actually own your house.
What's that?
I said you never actually own the house either, because you have the certificate of title.
Yeah, that's correct. And that's funny you should bring that up. Is the vehicles are not a truck or a car. A vehicle is a registered truck or a car, and it's a legal description or a legal name for a registered motor vehicle. And I once had a cop pull me over on a private road on a golf cart, and I was hauling butt. I think I was doing 30 miles an hour on a golf cart, and he does the sirens, comes up to me, and he asks for my license and registration. I said, "Sir, I'm on a private road on a private conveyance. You have no jurisdiction to pull me over. May I go?" He said, "No, license and registration." I said, "This thing is a private conveyance. It's not been registered, and I'm on a private road." And he said, "Well, I'm still going to give you a ticket." And I said, "What is the name of the street you're going to write on the ticket?"
Right.
and he looked at me, and I said, "What is the license plate that you were going to use to write on the ticket?"
Yeah.
He said, "I'll just get you for failing to register this as a motor vehicle." I said, "This isn't a motor vehicle." He said, "It has a motor on it." And I said, "So does your Razor. Does that make your Razor a motor vehicle?"
That's good.
And so 6 ways to Sunday, they try to get you to think and be powerless and take a ticket and sign the ticket. Now you got to go to court over a golf cart. Really? So it's, unfortunately, law enforcement, they think that they know the law, and
they don't.
Really, they've been programmed to that everybody is under the federal authority. And the fact remains, it's not true. If you can keep them calm and not get shot, and I'm not saying that for every officer, but I've seen some videos where people are calm and they're still killed. Yeah, it's really sad. So if you can stay calm and not get shot, and you can work through the issue, I've seen some people completely get let go because they spent time showing the law enforcement officer where they don't have any contract with them, and that they were a private man, and that they were in dishonor. And where they took the cuffs off, let him out the back of let him back out of the car, apologized to him profusely, put their private ID back in their pocket, and say, "Is there anything else I can do for you before we let you go?"
Wow.
And they say no. And so, but it's patience, it's time, it's marks on your wrist, unfortunately, and we've got years of reprogramming that we have to do to make true change and affect change in this nation.
Right. Well, I've understood that most policemen, and this, we're not going to turn this into a show about cops, but most policemen are not really educated in the law, and they're educated in the code and contract, and they're there to, the saying is to serve and protect, but they're only there to protect the property. They're not there to protect you.
Yeah, and the reality is, a policeman, the word police is policy. They're enforcing policies.
That's right.
And statute and code, and statute and code is not active law.
Right.
And so it's just like, you're saying they're not trained in the law. That's right. It's like a doctor. No. A doctor has 14 hours of nutritional training.
Yeah.
14 hours.
Out of his 8 years.
The very
That's
thing,
right.
And they got hundreds of thousands of hours in cancer treatment. And all of that has to do with, blowing up the person with drugs and making their hair go away and killing them.
Yeah.
More than helping them. So the system has to change all the way around. The lawyers are supposed to be helping, and the reality is they're hurting this nation, and they are an esquire, which is a title of nobility to the crown.
Yes.
This global power structure is. I was really worried this last election. Now, mind you, President Trump is not my president. I have a different president. And I'm not going to get into that with you guys. If you guys want to have a show,
that's another show. Yeah.
Yeah, but President Trump, he's not my president, but I've never seen a guy do more bold moves against the global power structure than this guy is doing.
Yeah.
And I hope it continues, because he's defunding the United Nations. He's bridging the gap between nations that have not talked in 85 years. He's cut the Treaty of France deal. He's cut the Iranian deal. He's cut the UN off of their funding. He's writing executive orders to help the companies of this nation make a lot of money, and unemployment is at its lowest. The stock market is at its highest. But here's the problem: we still are in a trifecta bubble.
Yeah.
And where the real estate market is at an all-time high, you got the stock market at an all-time high, and then you got the people already in the biggest food lines, and they're called food stamps.
That's right.
And we don't see them in the food lines like they were in 1929. But when you have 70 million people, that's 1 out of every 5 people in this nation on food stamps.
Food stamps, yeah.
And on subsidies. We need to change that. We need to get these people working. We need to get them jobs. We need to help them so that they are not reliant on other people's wealth, one way or the other, to feed them. Now, I understand that our system and structure is not, they're really not relying on other people's wealth. But the reality is in a fiat currency structure and system, digital digits are just created out of thin air, and they're given to them. After a while, that pops, that bubble pops, because you can't get support of the dollar on a worldwide basis for your bonds and for your they just won't, it won't continue. And after a while, and they're already doing it, they're creating other banking systems, and they're creating other structures like the Brexit and different things that are going to replace the Federal Reserve System, and they're trying to do it in a global one world structure system. And I hope to God we do in the Fed. I hope we do go to some type of hard currency backed system.
Mm-hmm.
And I do hope that we pull this nation out of bankruptcy and remove the surety for the people and tell the banks to screw off on the debt to them.
Yeah.
They've been riding hard on our backs for a long time. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you go to CAFR1, CAFR1.com, you will see that this nation is not in debt. The states have in excess of $100 trillion. $100 trillion. Yes, at the federal level, we're in debt. But the states are rich. The people could be rich. And the attorneys are bleeding us dry through bonds, prison bonds, putting people away. And we got to change that right now. We got to tell these guys enough is enough. We got to show forgiveness, and change the system lawfully and walk in a. They just passed legislation in South Carolina for people that want to drive a private conveyance or travel in a private conveyance. It's law now.
Really?
That they don't have to have a registered motor vehicle, because to be in compliance with the law, you have to give up your title of your vehicle, the MSO, to register it. And that's not fair to the people to demand their title to register a vehicle.
Right.
I mean, if you want to register the vehicle, register it, but you don't get my title of it. But there's no other way on this structure and the system to do it. So kudos.
That's great. That's a step in the right direction.
It's absolutely a start. It is a step in the right direction.
You mentioned something with this whole CAFR one page, and I just happened to click on it, and it's talking about the actual wealth of the states and all these assets that we have, and they were talking about the deficit and how much we're federally in debt. I always wondered. I said, okay, if that is the case, and the lottery is government regulated, how is it that we come out with these lotteries that end up being in excess of almost $1 billion? And it's been happening at least 3 times a year when it gets that high. For the past 2 or 3 years, it's been happening.
In California, that's a good question. In California, a 19-year-old kid won $1.5 billion on a lottery about 3 years ago. Can you imagine being 19 years old and I'm getting a single check for $700 million?
Yeah, that's crazy.
That kid's ruined. He's ruined. He's on crack someplace.
He's ruined before he even gets started.
But back to your point, the states are not in debt. The federal government is in debt, and it's by design. The whole thing and structure is by design. And I see that this administration, this president, is in the know, and we just got to make sure he's protected because, JFK was killed 5 weeks after he reinstituted the silverback certificate.
That's right.
And that when you're messing with the money, you're really turning over. So we got to make sure this guy's got a whole brand new structure and system of Secret Service that are truly loyal, that are not penetrable, that aren't a part of a private society, and loyal to their oath of office. Because we really need this guy for another 7 years. But I'm bummed because what's going to happen after 7 years when he's gone, and who else could take his position to, do what he's doing? He's literally done more to help America in the last 18 months than I think probably modern day presidencies for the last 50 years have ever done combined. He moves fast. Does that mean he's good for this nation? We'll see. He's good for an economy right now. He's good for low unemployment. And, the unemployment, by the way, is not 3.8%. It's more like 27%. They're only talking about the people that are getting checks. So they're not talking about the people that are not qualified to get checks. Right. Our unemployment in this nation is huge.
Yeah.
So we got some really big battles that we need to overturn. And And we really need to see the Clintons go to prison. We need to see the
Oh,
people
absolutely.
that supported the Clintons go to prison.
Yeah, that needs to happen.
They are a criminal network. They are doing things that are straight up felonious, murderous. They're straight up contempt for this nation. Hillary should be in prison. Trump said it right on the campaign. He said, if I were the president, you would be in jail. And you know what? He's making moves to do that right now.
Yeah. Now, as much as he's not my favorite guy, I can't call myself a supporter of his. I will say this much, and I've said it in the beginning when he first got elected, that because of his, I don't want to say business savvy, but because of his knowledge in business and what he'll bring to the table, I did say to a few people that I know, this is the short window of time that we have to take control of our finances and take control of our investments, take control over our corporate status, if you will, because after he's out of office, I don't think we'll have any control over that. And what I do believe is that the rights and the privileges of being a national or being an American will be limited to those who are already in that system.
Right.
I think we have a very short window of time.
Let's look at what you said really briefly as an American or as a national. When you look at what we are, when you say the word America, you're saying a continent. You're saying Canada, United States, and Mexico.
That's right.
Okay. So we are, Mexicans are Americans too.
Of course they are.
Canadians are Americans too. Now that doesn't make them a state citizen, but it makes them Americans.
Right.
And so people don't really look at it in that regard. So when you have the reason why we have an open border policy is because they bond every single one of those resident aliens by contract. They call them a resident alien. They bond them all, and now they're traded.
Yeah.
Their equivalent registered organization is now being traded as an asset to the United States corporation.
Yeah.
And that's why we're doing it across the world. We're invading countries, setting them up on Social Security, setting up their central banks, taking their assets, and using the people as surety all over the world.
That's the democracy, right?
Stop. That is. That's currently being operated as a democracy.
Right.
But again, we are a republic if you choose, and if you can keep it. And part of keeping it is you got to first be it. So were you born on this land? The answer is yes. Are you an American? Yes. But with a private right to contract, and that private right to contract is higher than your freedoms. So that's why on the driver's license application, on the voter registration application, on all applications, you're agreeing to certain terms. You're becoming an employee to the United States. And as an employee of the United States, you're on territory, and you're held under their policy and procedure and enforcement manual by policy officers. And if you don't comply, you get spanked. And you're subject to those terms and conditions. And it's that simple. So I like how people word it, like, just because I am within the territorial boundaries of the state of California does not mean I am subject to the jurisdiction thereof.
Okay.
That's the same thing as me being within the territory boundaries of a diocese of a Catholic church. It does not mean I'm a Catholic member.
Right. Yeah.
So I could be within the diocese, the territorial boundary of the diocese for Orange County, California. That does not make me a Catholic church member. Just like I could be within the territorial boundaries of the state of California, does not make me a Californian or United States corporate citizen subject to the jurisdiction thereof. I have to have an agreement that is intact and in place. Generally, these agreements are adhesion agreements that you don't really know you've signed and gave up those rights that you have granted under God and guaranteed by the Constitution and Bill of Rights. So we need to rethink everything and rethink the training and rethink how we're going to approach the future for this nation. And it's got to start with the kids. The kids today are being trained to be socialist and communist.
Yeah.
And no offense to anybody, but homosexuals and they're really it's sad, but in my opinion, the GMO that's going on throughout this nation, genetically modified organism, is what's going into our foods. I believe it's changing the structure of the way the youth today are thinking. I believe it's changing their DNA.
Yeah.
And what we're having in this generation more than any other generation before is the highest autistic rates, the highest sickness rates, highest rates of transgender feelings, highest rates of homosexuality, and we're really losing sight of what being an American or being a child of God is. And so we got to do a paradigm shift. We got to get the chems out of the skies. We got to clean up our soil. We got to heal the land, and we got to come back under God to be private and as an American and stand firm on that. Because as a quote-unquote king, I'm not saying you are a king if you're an American, but that's what the law says. You're self-governed at the very least. That's what the law says.
Right.
And the sovereignty of the king was passed to the state, which is the people. So we got to know how to guard our castles in love and at times with force, where when they push the people, we got to teach them. And if they don't like it, we got to show them by force through an administrative process. I'm not talking about your fists or a gun. Through an administrative process, by force, get them fired, get them in serious trouble, go get their bonds, write the complaints, get them out of that position, hold them to their oath of office, teach them that they serve the people, we don't serve them.
Yeah, that's been the wrong. It's been backwardly purported for so long that we actually think that that's right.
That's right.
Yeah. So
and that's why we're sheep.
Yeah.
And that's why they need training.
Absolutely, I totally agree, because one of the things that the whole education system, and I like to call it the public fool system, they're not in the business of educating. They're in the business of indoctrinating. And
yes,
our children, our youth, are so far away from the knowledge that they need to survive, pretty much. I mean, think about it. You know, I can go back to even when I was in college. This was over 20 years ago, and I said this to someone before. My parents were, you know, working class people. They didn't have a lot of money. I come up in a working home. Everything we got, you know, was worked for, was earned. So I don't know what it's like to grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth. So I didn't know anything about credit when I got to college. My parents didn't have credit cards. You know, they had their bank card. My mom, I think she had a Sears card or something like that. But we didn't have like a MasterCard or American Express. We didn't know anything about what it was to be able to put expenses on a credit card. And of course, that wasn't something I was taught in school, in any kind of economic class, or, you know, you were barely taught how to even balance a checkbook in school. So when I got to college, you know, they have these the Visa and MasterCard tables that come, and, you know, they get you, just sign here. You know, a few weeks later you get a credit card in the mail, and, you know, I'm 19 years old in college, and I get a $900 limit Citibank MasterCard. And what do you think a 19-year-old? Do you think about the 19-year-old that just won $1 billion? What about the 19-year-old that's got $900 in his pocket and a credit on a credit card? What's he going to do? You think he's just going to only spend 20% and to keep his FICO score up? No, he's going to go and buy clothes and pizza and wings and do whatever else because there's no educate, and that's what I did because I wasn't educated on how to use credit and how to operate, and use it to my advantage. Now, if somebody pulled me aside and said, "Listen, let's slow down for a minute and let's talk about what this really is that you have in your pocket. It's not free money, but you can use it to leverage getting, things like business credit or corporate credit." Nobody told me this when I was that age, and I'm learning about it now.
Right.
But my life would have been set up so much better had I learned this back in my early education years. And this is the kind of thing I'm talking about with our youth. They absolutely know nothing about how the credit system works. They know nothing about real estate. They know nothing about how to buy land. They know nothing about investments. They just know when they get money, they spend it. That's it. And that's the basis of our economy. And unfortunately, that is where our society is going. So it's just about spend, 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 spend.
Right. Yeah. And we're going to turn the corner back, and things are already moving back.
Mm-hmm.
There's a major movement to crush people that are trying to be free. Just keep being free.
Yeah.
And we have the protections in the law. As a matter of fact, the only group that's not being crushed is people trying to be state citizens.
Okay.
Every other group gets messed with. The only group that does not get messed with is state citizens because it's so well rounded in the law.
Mm-hmm.
They can't say jack about it. And that's why I'm pushing this, because people can have the freedom. People can come out of
Right.
of that system.
Yeah.
And which is a whole nother element of what we talk about, because it is a global structure, a global system that you are called to come out of it in the
Mm-hmm.
Bible,
Yeah.
if you believe that.
That's true.
And no matter what, you want to be an American. And so even if you aren't a Christian, you want to be an American.
Right.
You do not want to be somebody's surety or to be the
chattel
collateral
property.
for something.
That's right.
Yeah, nobody wants to be the chattel. I want to be free. And so that's what we teach. That's what we talk about. And it's exciting, man. There's a lot of stuff going on right now in this nation. And
Mm-hmm.
everybody has a negative thing to say. At His Advocates, we have a solution. I'm telling you, people don't. There's so many people out there, TV, radio, and they do commercials and stuff all the time, and nobody has a solution. We do. It's starting with retaking what you have in law personally, removing the surety, removing their ability to use your registered organization as the chattel or surety, and assigning you as through it. Go look up the word identity. Look up the words collective entity doctrine. That's where they're basing. You having identity is two people thought of as one. Collective entity doctrine, same thing. It's been around for 100 years. So that's where they're saying, "Are you this person on this? Is this you?" And you say, "Yes." That's how they gain jurisdiction.
That's right.
Because they own that.
Yeah.
And you're saying that's you. So they own you.
Yeah.
And so we need to get them to help them understand that's a great likeness of me, but I am me. And that is based on a registered organization that I personally have captured at this point, and I'm the beneficiary of. And does anybody have a claim against that? And so there's some of the most powerful words is invoking the oath of office and telling them that you are a child of God and that this is a family matter, and that you are the beneficiary of that. And is there anybody here that has a claim against this? And let them bring forward their claim, because that and they'll try to do an identification hearing. They'll try to do you're crazy and you need an attorney hearing. And you got to get through all that crap But you can have victory, and these judges, we need to be praying for them. We need to be educating them. We need to be helping them understand that they got to stop.
Yes.
They got to stop violating their oath of office and stop telling people and helping the banks steal the property away from being their shelter. Because all these properties are prepaid.
Yes.
And these banks are paid on these notes 30 and 40 and 50 times. They're hypothecating them.
Yeah.
There's no reason in law that they have the right to possess the property once it's been paid for, once that note's been paid for. No right.
Right.
So these judges are operating in collusion under patent law, international patent laws, and they think because they're operating under international patent laws, they're enforcing something that's lawful, but they're using color of law to enforcing unlawful actions against people that signed loan documents that are fraud in the fact and fraud from the very beginning. So we got a lot of work to do to change this. And it's a lot of education because a lot of people can't even fathom what it takes to get this done. But it's we can do it, man, but we got to stand. And it talks about personally standing against this whole beast system.
Now, I want to ask you something. You can go back to a statement you made earlier, and you said that the only group that's standing with this that's not being fought against is is the group that you're pretty much helping people be educated on is that state citizens, right?
It's state citizens.
Well,
people
what about
want to be a state citizen?
What about these so-called patriots or sovereign citizens that I'm pretty sure they're well-intentioned, but I've seen some videos where they kind of go in the court as being revolutionaries, and they don't have all their ducks in a row as far as knowledge of the law. Do you think they're a bit misinformed, or is it that they're kind of going off into tangents?
Well, I think they have good intentions for the most part.
Right.
I think that they're definitely misinformed, and I think anybody that calls himself a sovereign citizen needs to understand
that's definitely an oxymoron. Right.
A terrorist involved.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's an oxymoron.
It really is.
And he's calling himself a terrorist according to their law.
That's right.
So, here's the bottom line. We can't have 1 foot in and 1 foot out.
Okay.
Sloppy, meaning you can't go into court and claim sovereignty when you have an expired driver's license, or a driver's license that you haven't renewed, or a driver's license, period. If you have a driver's license, it has to be properly contracted.
Yes.
And that's what we teach.
Okay.
And so I don't tell people, look, you're gonna grow a beard, you're gonna go up into the mountains, live in a tent, and have a driver's license burning party. That's not what we tell people.
Right.
We show people how to live under God, but privately contract with the public side appropriately. That's all we do. Because there's ways to reserve your rights from a lawful and from a statutory standpoint that allow for you to sign any agreement and keep all your unalienable rights under God. And so we show people that. And that's a hard concept, but absolutely correct that those groups that are called patriots, they're all Americans. All of them are Americans, but they're contracted to be United States citizens.
That's right.
And they don't know any better. And so we got to teach them how to come out and retain the status of an American that you once had, that you still have, but you have with contracts that are keeping you from full access to all the benefits of being an American under God. And that's the journey that we're teaching at His Advocates. And I actually got to jump back into another meeting. I apologize, but
no, it's okay.
Is it much longer?
No, we're about like 5 minutes, and we've got to wrap it up anyway. So I wanted to get people to maybe get in contact with you, and maybe you can just tell them what the first step is and how.
Do you mind if I give a phone number out?
Absolutely. Yeah,
we do a free consultation for everybody, and we show people there's all kinds of different degrees of what they can do. Start with nothing, start with training, start with a VIP membership, start with a free membership.
Right.
And then some people want us to do everything for them, and we help people in all degrees. But we have a guy named Steven. Give him a call, toll free, 844-447-2386. 844-447-2386. And his extension is 702. You can go to two websites, statecitizenship.org or hisadvocates.org. Either way, you can watch some training videos that we have there, and you can go to youtube.com/hisadvocates. On Tuesdays and generally on Fridays, you can go to hisadvocates.tv. Hisadvocates.tv. We do a live TV show, and we talk about this stuff, and we free people every day.
Great, great. I'm posting all this in the chat room, so anybody that missed maybe writing it down, they can see this in the chat room on Facebook Live and get access to it.
Awesome. I appreciate you guys so much.
Sure. And it's been definitely a pleasure having you on the Freedom Truth Radio Show. Kelby, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to come on the air and talk about this. And we definitely want to have you back because there's so much more to talk about. There's about 1,000 chapters to this whole notion. So definitely want to get you back on sometime in the near future.
Anytime, buddy. Give me a call. We'll be more than happy to jump back on your show.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Hey, you too. God bless. Bye-bye.
All right. All right. Thank you so much for listening. Those of you that tuned in, he is a wealth of information. Kelby Smith from hisadvocates.org. There's so much information on his website. You can go check him out at statecitizenship.org or the other website he has called hisadvocates.org and also hisadvocates.tv. If you'd like a free consultation on trying to get more knowledge on becoming a state citizen or living in the private, you can contact his administrator, whose name is Stephen, at 844-447-2386, extension 702. Like I said, it's posted here in the chat. And if you're watching here by way of Facebook Live, you can check us out again. This will be posted and it'll be up again. And also, it's going to be posted on YouTube. So for those of you who probably missed the show tonight, check us out again. It'll be on my page, Vincent E. Scott, and also on the Freedom Truth Radio page on Facebook. Once again, thank you for listening. We will not be here next week. It's a family holiday, Father's Day. Those of you whose fathers are still alive and still around, celebrate your father and love on him. I lost my father a couple months ago, and I miss him sorely, but he left a legacy, and he taught me well how to be a man and how to be a family man. So I'm just hoping to let his legacy live on through me. But to all the fathers out there, happy Father's Day, and we'll be back on the 24th, the following Sunday, with a very good broadcast, and I'll post it up in Facebook who the guests will be. Stay tuned. Thank you for listening to Freedom Truth Radio Show, where the truth will make you mad first and then make you free. Have a good night.